Hi everyone, and welcome to the session on research. This is research that Innovate Durban together with partners has produced, and it is really a great opportunity for us to use this platform to share the research that we have conducted over the last year. I think it's really important as a province and city to produce research like the ones that we are presenting on this platform this morning, just to make sure that everyone is kept abreast of the latest information, the latest trends, but also really to have a source of information and a tool that they can access the relevant research and the data that is out there. So thank you for joining. I'm joined today with my co-presenters, Amy Ben from Innovate Durban, who's our lead at the Innovation Collab, and also Sakai, who is from Andy, Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs. And Andy is a partner of Innovate Durban and has produced, together with Innovate Durban, the ecosystem snapshots. So just in terms of the running order for this session, I will begin with my presentation on our innovation publication. Following me will be Sakai, who will be presenting the ecosystem snapshots that was conducted last year, as well as Amy Ben, who will follow Sakai, who will be presenting the findings from our funding map dashboard and research that was conducted. Once we have all presented, we will then address any questions that have been posed on the Q&A or chat function. We will answer those questions live if we are able to, and if we are not, we will definitely put it through onto the live event feed or after the festival has ended. So thanking you in advance for those questions and engagements on the platform. I'm just going to quickly share my screen with my presentation. Okay, I'm hoping that everyone can see that. So my job today is really to present to you the state of innovation in KwaZulu-Natal for the year 2020. The innovation publication is an annual tool that Innovate Durban produces, really just to showcase the level and status of innovation within our province and city, as well as to show what type of support is out there and where the gaps lie in terms of innovation in our province. And this is really complemented by the additional research that we produce, such as the ecosystem mapping in partnership with Andy, as well as our funding map that we did in partnership with the HSRC. So just moving on. So what the survey covered this for the last year. It was the second edition of the publication. We looked at 5 categories in the 2020 edition of the State of Innovation in KwaZulu-Natal. And these 5 areas were people, investment, infrastructure, ecosystem, and impact. And this year's edition has expanded the measure of innovation to include a number of new indicators. So you'll see that people relates to the human capital and knowledge generated that enables and accelerates innovation and creativity. Investment looks at the amount and the type of investment directed towards innovation and research. Infrastructure, we've looked at internet access in KZN compared to other provinces in the country. And then ecosystem looks at the environment in which innovation takes place. And it also includes a look at innovation events and funding instruments. And then lastly, impact, which measures the benefits of innovation across various areas, including revenue, employment, and economy. So the first indicator, in summary, when we looked at the indicator from a people perspective, we noted that it has been a positive year for innovation in KwaZulu-Natal. All indicators that we had measured have increased, and generally KZN is performing well when compared to other provinces. The only indicator looking at national senior certificate math performance suffered over the previous year, and this was experienced across most sectors, so it is quite a common finding. So just to look at some of the stats, we looked at national senior certificate graduates in maths and science in KwaZulu-Natal. We looked at the years 2017 to 2019. And when looking at this indicator, we saw that there was a decline from 31.3% in 2018 to 29.9% in 2019. So a very slight decrease in that. The number of math graduates in 2019 was 17,306, and this was noted to be the most out of all provinces. The national senior certificate performance for science in our province increased from 48% to 51%. Also a very small increase, but still an increase nonetheless. And the number of science graduates in 2019 was at 20,225, and this was once again noted as the most out of all provinces. We also looked at TVET N3 and N6 graduates in engineering. In 2018, it's noted that KZN TVET colleges had the highest number of students that completed N3 engineering studies, and the second highest number of students that completed N6 engineering studies when compared to other provinces. So definitely promising in terms of the graduates that are coming out of our province. We looked at the university graduates in SET, doctoral graduates, as well as the number of publications in terms of outputs in KwaZulu-Natal. Across the 4 universities measured in KwaZulu-Natal, and that being DUT, MUT, UKZN, as well as UniZulu, in the year 2018, enrollment and graduation for science, engineering, and technology degrees increased to 45,000 and 9,400 respectively. Enrollment and graduation for all doctoral degrees increased to 4,600 respectively, this being the highest in the country. And publication outputs increased by 6.6%, and this is once again the highest number in the country. You will see, if you have read the previous publication, that in terms of these indicators and measures, KZN has always performed well when compared to other provinces. And this just shows that there is a number of studies being pushed out from universities, and especially with regards to the doctoral thesis and publications that are being published annually. We also looked at national patent applications. We looked at the number of patents that have been lodged in the country across the 2 years. Nationally, local patent applications rose by 65%. And then resident trademark applications have risen by 1% to 22,900 in 2018. And this data was sourced from the CIPC. Our second indicator looked at investment, and this measured the value of investment across all indicators, but still remains significantly lower than Gauteng and the Western Cape. And you'll see that in the next few slides. So when we looked at KZN research and development expenditure, we noted that it was up by 14.7% in the year of review. And most of this expenditure was conducted by the business and higher education sectors, which combined make up 74% of R&D expenditure. We also looked at KZN gross expenditure on R&D as a percentage of GDP, and this increased by 0.05%. In 2017-18 compared to South Africa's indicator as a percentage of GDP, which was 0.83% for the same period. And this was against a national target of 1.5%. Here, once again, KZN has the 4th highest business expenditure on R&D as a percentage of GDP. And it has decreased over the previous 9 years, which is not a great story to tell. Besides looking at what governments and education sectors are investing in innovation, we also decided to look at private investment. And by doing this, we looked at venture capital and the level of venture capital investment in KZN businesses. So it was noted that the number of investments made by VCs in South Africa increased to 181 in 2018. And this equated to a value of 1.5 billion rand spent. Investment by VCs into businesses with head offices in KZN increased from 2.8% to 6.8%, which is quite a significant increase, and this is compared to other provinces. So although there are not a lot of head offices of venture capital agencies based within KwaZulu-Natal, we have seen that increase, especially with some offices moving their base to KwaZulu-Natal or increasing their presence within our province. We looked at the venture capital investment by the fund type, and we looked at it nationally. And you can see that the largest share of VC investment was directed towards the startup stage and the growth stage, and very little in the very early stage, high risk. Angel investors contributed 4.2% to all deals, while other government, corporate, and independent funds contributed 11, 15, 33, and 35% respectively. Oh, sorry. Our third indicator was infrastructure, and just to note here in summary that the primary infrastructure indicator is internet access, and 59.4% of KZN households have internet access compared to the national average of 64.7%. So you can still see that we are quite behind and have a lot of catching up to do. When we looked at the ecosystem, and Sakai will go into a lot more detail on the ecosystem mapping, but when we did our research for the publication, we noted that indicators of the innovation ecosystem include the number of innovation events and funding instruments. We looked at the number of innovation events, and it was noted that there were 40 innovation events in KZN in 2020, and this was down from 53 in the previous year. And I mean, we all know that COVID has definitely had an impact on this indicator. There were also 405 innovation funding instruments within the Innovate Durban community of medium to high relevance. In terms of impact, there have been improvements across the people, investment, infrastructure, and ecosystem indicators. The KZN Innovation Growth Index for 2018 is 50%. And this is reflective of increasing innovation in KwaZulu-Natal. We looked at employment in the telecom sector. And employment in the telecom sector in South Africa decreased from 37,000 to 33,000 in 2019, and only 31% of those employed are female. So just looking at all those indicators, like I said, this is just a summary of the findings that are contained in the greater report that is on our website, innovate.durban. There is also an interactive dashboard. So if you're needing to download any of these indicators or look at it in a lot more detail, you can do so. It is an interactive and user-friendly dashboard. But we looked at some of the recommendations for future research, and it was noted that we need to find a way to better measure impact as opposed to output indicators. And this includes working closely with the CIPC to release disaggregated data on business license and trademark applications, working with the Department of Small Business, SARS and CIPC to understand business startup performance in KZN, working with Stats SA to gather credible disaggregated data on employment per sector, and this is extremely important as well. And then also looking at how can we quantify grassroots kitchen innovation. And this is taking place at a large scale, but we just have difficulty in measuring this type of innovation. And also, what is the number of businesses incorporating PhD findings and graduates into their business? We've got fantastic research. We've got a number of PhD graduates, especially from the KZN province being one of the highest in the country. But what is that research that they are producing? What is that turning into, and what is happening to these graduates? And then what are the main mechanisms being used to commercialize PhD findings? You'll also see one of the challenges that we faced with, and for those who do conduct research and are familiar with this, with conducting research, that the data is quite dated, and it's very difficult to find data that has been just released in a previous year, and sometimes we are having to look at 2 years prior to the year in which we are measuring. So that is a challenge. It is also a challenge that we are not finding all the data that we are setting out to research and to find. So those two issues definitely have an impact on the data and the quality of the data that is put out there. But please have a look at our publication, which is on the Innovate Durban website. You can also email us for additional information. Like I mentioned, the innovation publication is an annual tool and resource that Innovate Durban publishes, and we will be conducting research for the next publication within the next few months to release to you at the end of this year. So if you have any questions, please post it into the chat and we'll aim to answer, or I'll aim to answer those at the end of the session. Thank you very much. Amy. Sorry, Sakai, I'll hand over to you.
Very much. Thank you very much, Aurelia, for the introduction. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. By way of introduction, my name is Sakai Chiwandamira, and I am the Regional Chapter Manager for ANDI, which is known as the Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs. It is a privilege to be addressing you all on the Durban entrepreneurial ecosystem. A core mandate of ANDI is to better understand and improve entrepreneurial ecosystems in developing economies. One methodology that we use to understand the health and available resources within these developing economies, such as South Africa, is what we refer to as the entrepreneurial ecosystem mapping tool. Now, this is a tool which basically is a generic survey which pulls various data points for analysis and reporting. These maps are powerful tools that have been proven to promote sustainable economic growth through the facilitation of networking, dialoguing, but most importantly, providing a credible reference point for investors and partners looking to build on existing work done in the ecosystem. During 2019, as mentioned by Aurelia, Innovate Durban partnered with ANDI to deliver the Durban Entrepreneurial Ecosystem Snapshot with a specific focus on innovation. This was part of Innovate Durban's mandate to support innovators as well as innovation across the KwaZulu-Natal province through the dissemination of relevant research about the ecosystem. Now, looking at the summary slide, the snapshot discovered that there were over 110 non-financial support providers at the time that we conducted the snapshot. Also, there were 35 financial support providers and 6 who classified themselves as other ecosystem support providers. What I would like to highlight is that at the time of conducting the snapshot, we discovered that there were over 124 programs which were being offered in the Durban ecosystem. I will provide a bit more detail in the next slides. Now, looking at the intervention type, the majority of programs surveyed provide non-financial support to entrepreneurs, with the greatest proportion providing non-financial services directly, while promoting as well as educating about entrepreneurship more broadly. Financial support was the least common service, which includes direct investment into businesses, financial support to intermediaries, and investments into funds. So this is definitely an area that we need to look into. Now, this leads us into the types of investment instruments which are being offered in the Durban ecosystem snapshot. Grants were the most common type of investment instruments provided to entrepreneurs in Durban, which was provided by 57% of the surveyed programs. Now, this is likely due to the nature of many of the organizations operating these programs being either government or academic entities, for which grants are more typical instruments relative to debt or equity. Looking at the stakeholder type, very few programs identified as finance providers, such as impact investors, venture capital funds, private equity funds, and angel investors. And I think this really ties to the point that Aurelia mentioned in her presentation. Also, according to a recent Durban Government Treasury Economic Review, we noted that this may be due to a perception that there is very limited local pipeline of investment-ready entrepreneurs. And I just want to pause on this point because this is a point that we have noticed in all of the ecosystem snapshots that we have conducted. So it's not really specific to Durban, but to the other provinces as well. The most common types of stakeholders in the Durban ecosystem, based on the survey responses, included non-financial service providers, such as business development service providers, enterprise development services, and most importantly, accelerators and incubators. Looking at non-financial support, over half of the programs provide non-financial supports, which includes networking services. Other popular non-financial support services included business strategy and planning, leadership development, and financial management. Interestingly, the most common delivery mechanisms for non-financial support was mentorship and classroom training. So there's still quite a bit that we can do in this regard. Now, when we're looking at impact objective, the most common impact objective among the programs that we surveyed was capacity building, followed closely by those focused on economic themes, including employment generation and income productivity growth. This seems to speak very directly to the economic challenges faced in the region. Notably, nearly half of the programs focusing on creating access to information, which was a significant barrier to local entrepreneurs. Therefore, we need to ensure that we are looking at access to markets as part of our focus. Now, when we are looking at the sector of focus, almost half of the surveyed programs are sector agnostic, followed by agriculture and food, manufacturing and information, as well as communication technology. This reflects Durban's high level of industrialization and favorable climate, as well as soil for agriculture. Also, we noted that Durban is well positioned as a national communications hub. The fact that a number of programs are sector agnostic may reflect the diversification of the local economy, making it necessary for programs to be prepared to serve entrepreneurs from all sectors, which is actually something of great importance. Now, as you're all aware, the focus of this ecosystem was really based on innovation. So I'd like to spend a few minutes just talking about the key insights that arose during the ecosystem snapshot. The overall entrepreneurial ecosystem in Durban has a significant and growing number of resources, specifically targeting innovation-focused enterprises. For instance, 2/3, which is about 66% of the programs surveyed, indicated a significant focus on innovation. Now, it was evident from the snapshot that innovation and entrepreneurship are intrinsically linked. Interestingly, entrepreneurs, and in particular growth-oriented entrepreneurs, develop innovative products, services, and business models which create value in a market and, most importantly, contribute towards the local economic development. So what we found was that the most common type of support that is provided by innovation-focused programs is centered around design thinking and conceptualization, followed by commercialization. The innovation-focused programs delivering these services typically target startup and early-stage ventures, and we found that that consisted of about 83%, which were primarily delivered by way of connections to experts or mentors. There was some sort of training that was provided, and also customized technical assistance or advisory services. What I wanted to highlight is that relatively few programs invest directly into ventures. And once again, this speaks to the research that Aurelia presented on. However, for those that do, using flexible instruments like equity and grants is more common among innovation-focused programs. So what we found is that nearly 80% of the stakeholders that were using equity instruments have a focus on innovation, whereas only about 60% of stakeholders using debt have this focus. So there's definitely a need to focus on debt as well. Now, I just wanted to focus on the key insights and start off with the challenges, and then we can look at the opportunities. I'd like to start off with youth unemployment. As many of you are aware, South Africa's province of KwaZulu-Natal has one of the highest youth unemployment rates in the world. According to research, it is reported that 37% of young people from this province, aged between 15 and 24, are unemployed. The second challenge that was cited by the respondents speaks to the lack of culture of entrepreneurship. And once again, this is a challenge that is not necessarily specific to the Durban or KwaZulu-Natal province, but also to most of the provinces in South Africa. Now, what we found under this challenge is that the perceptions of entrepreneurship as a viable career path remain very low in Durban. Also, respondents commonly cited the fear of failure as a significant barrier. And I want to say that while public sector initiatives such as Go Durban and Durban Investment and Promotion have gone a long way to promote Durban as an attractive investment opportunity, the entrepreneurial community continues to remain rather insular. Therefore, there's a limited perception of its potential to scale business outside the city, province, or beyond. Now, I want to look at the next challenge, which is really looking at gaps in the types of supports. Local entrepreneurship support programs show a bias towards general peer-to-peer mentoring and networking supports. We saw that there is a limited number of programs that are offering more technical or sector-specific training. Now, what we found is that this may be due to a lack of sufficient resources to develop as well as maintain technical expertise. So definitely corporate engagement in strategic supply development could help fill this technical gap, but currently this remains limited in the local ecosystem. Then last but not least, I'll focus a bit on the nascent early stage capital markets. So although South Africa has a well-developed capital markets, the local ecosystem in Durban has limited financing available that is appropriate for early stage and also growth-seeking entrepreneurs. Though there are significant number of government programs, as well as private sector development initiatives through ESD, these do not provide the sort of growth-oriented capital that is required, especially in supporting this ecosystem. Now, I want to move on to the opportunities because this is where we would like to call upon all of the ecosystem actors. So some of the opportunities that the respondents cited relate to the low cost of doing business. We have found that it is relatively inexpensive input costs such as rent, raw materials, and labor, which make Durban an attractive place to establish a business compared to other provinces. Also, what we found is that the Durban business community is a relatively small and easier community to navigate, especially with regards to government regulatory bodies and support agencies. More broadly, South Africa's process to start a business appears to be simpler than other countries. So this is an opportunity that also relates to us. And this is speaking with the African continent and other African countries. Then the second opportunity speaks to attractive investment context. Now, according to the World Economic Forum, the Global Competitive Index, South Africa is a regional financial hub with a well-developed equity as well as capital markets. And I want to touch on this point because there was a study that was conducted by Deloitte, which highlighted in particular that Durban is an attractive destination for investment. And they cited that this is due to its social environment, but also good transport and logistics infrastructure. So this is definitely something that we need to look into. Then the last 2 points really speak to strong academic institutions. We have quite a number of strong academic capabilities and institutions such as UKZN, DUT, which are attractive and very active in supporting new ideas through academic publications and research. And this really speaks to some of the slides that were shared earlier on. And then last but not least, there is this notion of a collaborative environment. And what the respondents cited is that Durban's entrepreneurial ecosystem support providers are in a strong position to organize and collaborate on efforts to better address the needs of entrepreneurs and potential entrepreneurs as well. So based on the sample of the programs in the snapshot, it seems very feasible to galvanize the ecosystem to tackle some of the most pressing issues preventing entrepreneurship from flourishing. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I wanted to share with you some of the key recommendations that have emanated from this snapshot. To start off with, we need to increase support for technical skill building. I cannot overemphasize this point. Many of the key issues prohibiting entrepreneur success in the ecosystem include the fear of starting a business, confidence or ability when communicating with investors. And this can be addressed by building the technical skills. Also, we firmly believe that if we can combine the technical skills with the existing mentorship support that's already being provided, then this will certainly help in building confidence, which a number of the respondents cited. Secondly, we need to improve access to information. Now, access to information is the fifth most common impact objective that I made mention of earlier on among the ecosystem players. And what we have seen is that there is a lack of access to actionable information, which is a barrier to both the current and also aspiring entrepreneurs, which is obviously affecting their ability to identify, but most importantly, develop business opportunities. So we need to ensure, and thank you very much to Innovate Durban and to the other ecosystem actors for constantly trying to create platforms that provide up-to-date information on resources that are available to local entrepreneurs. Then also we have the issue of increasing engagement with corporates. Durban has an increasingly diverse economic landscape with extensive opportunity for both public and private sectors to collaborate on. So we need to ensure that we intensify the engagement with the corporates, but also with government across all of the sectors to understand the key development plans and the role that corporates can continue to play in supporting entrepreneurial inclusion within these ecosystem. And then last but not least, we need to constantly continue to engage investors to support local entrepreneurship. Now, despite capital being available, very little of it flows to entrepreneurs, particularly in the Durban area. Now, among innovation-focused ventures, specifically entrepreneurs that do have this focus, they find it very difficult communicating the ideas to investors without previously having established a relationship. Additionally, what we found is that while available capital appears to be suited for entrepreneurs, in reality, the deal sizes are typically out of range for most startups. And this is something across most of the other provinces in South Africa. So we need to ensure that we create a line of communication where entrepreneurs and support programs can better understand the expectations of investors, as well as tailor support services that help prepare entrepreneurs accordingly. Now, in conclusion, I would like to thank you very much for listening to this snapshot, but also encourage you to visit the website, as you can see on the screen, and feel free to reach out to Innovate Durban should you wish to have a copy of this ecosystem snapshot. Thank you very much to Innovate Durban for offering us this opportunity, and most importantly, once again, presenting the findings of this ecosystem snapshot.
Thanks so much, Sakai. I am going to take over from there. The beauty of Sakai's last point was that she spoke about a lack of funding for innovators. And so this is where I step in and speak about the Innovate Durban funding map. Aurelia did introduce me earlier. My name is Amy Ben. I am the Innovation Collab Lead for Innovate Durban. Aurelia mentioned that our discussion today is looking at a lot of the different research that Innovate Durban has conducted in partnership, either internally or in partnership with various organizations. So the funding map that I'm presenting on today was conducted in collaboration with the HSRC. So the funding map, like any of the research Innovate Durban is doing, is undertaken so that we can get a better understanding of what the innovation ecosystem looks like in Durban, and also offer more mechanisms of support for our innovators in Durban and beyond. So in terms of the funding map, I'm going to give you just a bit of background to the process, and then just a quick look at the funding map, which is live on our website at the moment. So after the presentation, you are welcome to go and have a look at the funding map, as well as the ecosystem map and the innovation publication, which are both on the website. So just a little bit of background: the funding map process, in terms of the development of the funding map process, happened in 3 stages. So stage 1 was kind of a framework and initial mapping exercise, again heavily led by the HSRC, or in conjunction with the HSRC here, through one of our partners there, Paul Platingo, who works for the Policy Action Network within the HSRC. And so here we did a kind of a framework in terms of the broad offering for funding across South Africa, and in terms of the different funding mechanisms, and just a kind of initial map. The funding map, like any of our research, an important part of it is to have it as inclusive as possible and have it innovator-led. So our second stage looked at what we call Innovator Ad, and then we went through a validation process. So we worked with a group of about 10 local Innovate Durban innovators, innovators who have come through some of our programs, partners we'd worked with, innovators looking for funding in the region. And so we worked to grow that initial map that we had developed with the HSRC, and also just to validate funding. I know innovators and entrepreneurs will know that the funding landscape can change really quickly. So this was an important process we undertook in the initial stage, and is also a process we undertake for the funding map on an ongoing basis. So the funding map that you'll be able to access on the website is a living dashboard. It gets updated on a continuous basis. So that it's not just a list of funding mechanisms that someone looked at 2 years ago and half of them become irrelevant really quickly. So that's an important element with regard to the funding map. And then the final stage we looked at was the development of this funding dashboard. The list of funding mechanisms is very long. We want it to be accessible and inclusive and easy to understand and access, and to navigate. And so we've developed this funding dashboard. Like I said, it's on our website. The funding dashboard is in 2 versions. So version 1 is live at the moment. Version 2 will be live over the next couple of days. And there you're able to have a look at the dashboard. You're able to search by sector, and you're able to link straight to kind of the relevant websites. And what I should have done there is take you to the next slide, just so that you can see what that looks like. Before I do that, this is just a quick overview of some of the funding mechanisms. We again looked at a lot of different elements. I'm going to talk just directly about the direct funding instruments. There's a lot of support organizations. I know Sakai obviously spoke a bit about that as well. Some of those are included in the funding map as well. For us, in terms of the development of the funding map, it was really important to look at the broadest spectrum possible of funding mechanisms. We didn't want innovators, we wanted innovators to be able to say, I'm not interested in VC funding, I need this type of funding and look for that. Or, I've gotten some grant funding and wasn't successful with that, I need, something else, some impact investment or something like that. So what we've done is we've developed the funding map and classified each funding mechanism into specific kind of elements. We've also got kind of the size of the funding as well as the maturity of the innovation, so that again you'll see both in the innovation publication and in the ecosystem snapshot that there is often a lack of support for high risk early stage innovators. So we didn't want to again develop this funding map that excludes a lot of innovators. So you'll see as you go through the funding map and the dashboard that we've worked hard to kind of include funding mechanisms for a broad kind of maturity of your innovation. So there's mechanisms for very high stage early risk, early stage high risk, and then for those who are maybe more mature further on in their journey, as well as those who just need 20,000 Rand because their only hurdle is a laptop, and those who need kind of commercialization level funding. So that's just this kind of slide just shows you kind of that broad type of funding mechanisms that we've included in the dashboard. These are just two screenshots I'm going to show you of the funding dashboard. But again, like I mentioned, it's live on our website. If you go to Innovate.Durban, you click on the resources drop-down menu, you can go straight to dashboards. In fact, you can see here our innovators and indicators dashboard, which comes out of our innovation publication. You can see our ecosystem snapshot there. And if you click on the innovation funding map, it'll take you through to the funding map. Like you can see here, we've got the sector focus shown, the value. Unfortunately, sometimes the value isn't given by the organization. And then you can click straight through to visit the website of that specific funder or funding mechanism. And once version 2 is up, there's a couple more features there. You can search for specific funders or specific sectors, or a kind of a specific type of funder. You can also filter by funder. Like I said, if you're not interested in VC funding, you can filter that out or look for a specific kind of funding. Yeah, so very, very briefly, that is our funding map and what that looks like. Again, we are wanting to make it as livable as possible, as accessible as possible. So if you know a funding mechanism that isn't there, let us know, we can include it. If you find success through the funding map, we'd love to hear about that. But yeah, the funding map, as well as the ecosystem map and the innovation publication, really the intention behind that is to work to understand what the ecosystem looks like, so that we can continue to partner with organizations so that we can add as much value as possible, or we can find areas that aren't being met, areas of need for innovators that aren't being met, and we can either step into that or work to get that need sorted. So thank you so much. That's everything from me. I'm going to hand back to Aurelia. I'm not sure if we've had any questions come through. I know we only have about 15 minutes left for questions from those who have joined online, but thank you so much.
Thanks, Amy, and thanks to Sakai as well for those really interesting presentations. I think what we'll do now, We will take questions and answer any questions in the live event feed, so not part of the session. So we'll give people a little more time to engage with the content. I know there's a number of different sessions taking place. So I'd like to give a little more time for those questions, and we can engage with them on the live event feed. Alternatively, if anyone has a question that is directed to a specific person of this panel, you will find that you can actually engage with us directly and send a direct message privately to us if you do not want it on the main live event feed. So I think that will be a better option for us, because I know that a lot more people are going to watch this video after it has ended, and I think we'll take the questions collectively at that point, or individually if they're wanting to engage. So I'd like to just thank everyone for being part of the session. Thanks to Amy and Sakai once again. Just a reminder, go onto our website, onto the resources page, where you will find all the different publications, but also the dashboards. There is a link to the Andy ecosystem dashboard on our website as well. Alternatively, you can go directly to the Andy site. And like Amy said, if you've got any questions or comments or feedback on any of the research outputs that we have produced, please feel free to share those with us. We're always looking at ways to improve what we're doing, and really happy to hear from you. So thank you very much, and wish you all well.